Okay, Sean, you're on.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. And looks like just a reminder, everybody try to stay within the agenda and keep meetings a little more brief than they have the last couple times. Welcome again, Rodney. It looks like we have some housekeeping items.
Yes, thank you, Sean. So we're going to try to stay on time this evening, which means we pretty much assign a time limit for each section of the meeting. I will try to serve as a timekeeper, and we'll see how this goes. And basically, this is a result of the executive committee and discussing to try to hold the meetings to keep it on time. We need to vote to approve two sets of minutes. We need to approve the Community Tree Council meeting minutes for June 8th, and we need to approve the Community Tree Council Committee meeting minutes that were held on June 15th. So with that, I would like to ask if anyone has had a chance to take a look at those minutes and if anybody has any editing suggestions for them. Okay, I have made a few changes. I fixed a couple things today. With that, I would like to make a motion to approve the June 8th Community Tree Council meeting minutes and the June 15th Community Tree Council Committee meetings minutes.
I'll second.
So I'll just go ahead. Sean, do you want to go ahead and everybody vote on this, please?
I move that we accept the meeting minutes.
It's already been approved, moved and seconded, Sean. We just need to vote.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is moved and accepted.
Okay. Anyone opposed?
Rodney, in the email, and I may have missed it, I got sets of minutes to approve and the list of members for the tree council, but I did not get this meeting's agenda. Is that something you just share on the screen so I can see it?
I can share it, yes.
Excellent.
I have a ton of documents open, so I'm kind of scanning for it.
Just for curiosity, do we have a quorum? I can't tell everybody that's on.
This is like a lot of multitasking for someone who's not good at multitasking. I believe we're close, but I'll come back to that, Pam.
Okay.
Mary, it would be easier if I just emailed those to you. If you could wait, I can send that here in a minute once the meeting gets going. Okay, so the next item is to read the motions that were passed in June. A motion was made motion was approved by unanimous vote. We formulate the ad hoc interview committee, which consists of prior ad hoc interviews. Another motion was passed by unanimous vote on the third Monday of each month from 12 p.m. until 5 p.m. for the purpose of conducting the Community Tree Council committee meetings. Motion was passed by unanimous vote to conduct a July meeting, which is the meeting we're having today. Motion was passed by unanimous vote to recommend to the mayor and commission to amend the sentence in the tree ordinance to change, basically to allow for names for the community tree council that appear in the logo. And a motion was made, seconded, and passed by unanimous vote to adopt two new logos for the community tree council. The first one was a oak leaf, and the second one was an urban scene with a canopy in the background. And with that, I'll pass the meeting on to Pam.
Okay, I emailed the treasurer's report to everybody earlier this afternoon. I'm on a different computer now. Let me just open it up. Not much has changed since the last month. The only change to the money market account is an increase of 25 cents for the monthly interest. And one check was cash. That was the check to Moon's Tree Farm for the trees we bought earlier this year. The ending balance right now is $1,929.45. There is one outstanding check right now. That's $250 for the graphic design. And that's really the only changes that we've had. Any questions?
No.
All right, I don't hear anything. So if you have questions later, just email me.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, this brings us on to fundraising, and the discussion and action item is the vote to apply for the Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful UPS 2020 tree grant. Any updates on that? I think it's due on the 17th, if I'm not mistaken.
It's really hard to hear you, Sean. I don't know if you can get closer to your mic.
Someone mute that second window. Sean has two windows open. I think it's that other one that's causing the trouble.
Ah.
Okay, is that better? No?
Yeah, I think so.
An action item? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Discussion and action item is the vote to apply for Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful UPS 2020 tree grant. Any updates on that, guys? I know it's due later in the week, the 17th.
Sean, this is Stacy. I'm just returning from vacation, so I'm not sure if other folks took the draft grant that I wrote or that we wrote a few years ago. Did anyone start to rework that, or I know there were a lot of folks that said they would, so I'm just sort of curious what's happened while I was gone.
I think we were waiting to vote, and that we all acknowledge that because we have like 2 or 3 successful versions of the proposal, that we could use that information plus add additional details to flesh out a new one. But I think the first thing is that we I think there's a motion to, actually, I'm not sure if we made a motion over email or not, but I think it was suggested that we make a motion to apply for this grant. And if there hasn't been one, then I'm happy to make this motion.
That's progress. Yeah, I was in the same boat as Nina, where I looked over, Stacy, what you sent, and I wrote down some initial thoughts, but I was waiting until we voted, and then I figured we'll brainstorm and turn it in, assuming the vote would be yes.
Now,
I'd
I
be
see that.
happy to second that motion.
Before we move forward with that, has anybody talked to Danny and asked
Yeah.
if they want, or if where they would want it, what they want, the scope of it, that kind of thing? I think before, before we do that, we need to talk to Danny.
Well, so Sean and I had a meeting with Rick Parker.
Rick Parker.
Yeah, and Charlie. Anyway, sorry, this was months ago now, but we discussed applying for a Georgia Power grant that would have been, 10 times more money in terms of, and the numbers of trees. And we have their full support for Broad Acres, and for a couple of reasons. And one is that we've already done work there. And we've worked out details we've walked the site with Danny, and we have details about where they want trees and where they wouldn't want trees. Of course, the specifics haven't been worked out yet, but we have a general sense of what would work there. Now, both of our applications for the Georgia Power Grant were declined. I've submitted it twice, and I haven't gotten any good feedback as to what we could do to make it stronger. So I feel like we have their blessing based on that meeting that we had. But yeah, Joe, it's a really good point that we, at least sort of follow up or say, remind them that we are still actively trying to get money so that we can keep planting trees at Broad Acres or other AHA neighborhoods.
Cool. Yeah, that's all I needed to hear. I just, I didn't want us to get into a situation where we acquired money first and then, they didn't know. I don't want to blindside them with anything, obviously. But yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thanks for checking on that, because that's really important.
So I'll make the motion then that we submit an application to the 2020 Keep America Beautiful UPS grant.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? It is moved that we, all those, is there anyone opposed to it? Okay, so it is moved that we,
So who's going to do it?
So maybe, I'm happy to share. So Mary, you have previous examples. I know Sean does. Maybe the three of us. I'm not excluding others, but it's really not that onerous to put one of these together. So maybe a small group of us could work on it over the next couple of days and then send it to Stacy.
Yeah, and usually, it's funny, Nina, we have a habit, for those that are new to this, of doing this grant sort of several days before it's due. So I do think that it's important that we look at, with the hardest part, I guess, is the tree species and really what we want to see happen, because that is what they really ask for more detail about. Are these going to be fruit-bearing trees? Are these shade trees specific to canopy? That's sort of what they're looking for. And when you guys, however you take that grant and you just sort of rework it, I can then, if there's places where I know that they'll ask more information on the reporting, I can go ahead and supplement information. But I think knowing what tree species that and the prices of those trees, that's what gets to be a little challenging. So
I believe we do have some pricing information from last year's Broadacres site, which
Right.
maybe we can kind of retool a little bit. As far as, the species, I think it'd probably be a mix of shade, flowering, and fruit trees, and maybe we don't need to go too far into detail more than that, but just propose a variety. I'll be happy to do another base map for us to mark up. I know we did that last year. I still have a PDF of the old site. If we're doing Broadacres again, then it's ready to go.
Right.
So, yeah.
That was. Oh, sorry. That would be awesome, Joe. I think for the actual application, it's really bare bones. Like, it's not really. I remember once I created a map and I had a budget and an Excel table, and there was like nowhere to even put that in the application. So if we get the funding, then that would definitely be the next step in building off what we did last year. I also think it'd be great to try to do fruit treat, like bushes and plants again. We didn't have any luck at Rock Springs because they were all destroyed, but I think we'd have more luck at Broadacres because the community is different there. So it'd be nice to try that again.
Yeah, I agree. I think fruit would be cool. It's kind of a good educational opportunity for kids there. Yeah, I agree.
I guess, Nina, one of the things that I guess I'm looking at, last year's grant, and like, for instance, there's one area where we say, well, we're going to specifically plant shade trees in 6 pocket areas where there's no canopy. We're going to then plant fruit bearing trees in 3 smaller garden areas. So those kind of details, I'm sort of curious if, from walking the site with Danny and Rick, if you know those areas where the planting will take place.
So I know, one of the most critical areas is found by the daycare. It's scorching hot right there, 0 shade. So that would be of my interest in moving down that.
Is that where they had the giant tree failure about 2 or 3 years ago?
That's right.
Yes.
That would be awesome to plant a large canopy shade tree right there then, I think.
I don't think it would be like right there, but on the back side of it. If I'm not mistaken, it was a huge water oak that was right on the street, right on the corner. I'm sure affected by utilities. But it's wide open on the back side.
Sean, you need to close one of your open windows. I think I'm getting terrible feedback. It sounds like from you.
Okay, if I
am too. It's like a reverb.
All right.
So we lost him now?
You there, Sean?
I am. At 1 second, sorry.
We can hear you. We can't see your face.
Okay.
But
You can keep talking. I can hear you guys.
Rodney's if he keeps getting out of hand like this.
I'm fine.
Hey, I do have a question as I'm looking at the old grant. Also, Rodney, do you know, did we ever, those gator bags, looks like we got gator bags last year. Do we still have those for reuse or no?
I gave all the gator bags that we had to Phil. There were a few, but there weren't too many. Phil may know how many exactly, but I think maybe half a dozen or so.
I haven't done a count recently, but we have probably close to 15 bags. still on hand and available.
Oh, that's great. Hey, another question while I've got the mic here, because I see that Seth is on the call. Seth, is there, I know in the past we've talked about augers and maybe being able to get some holes dug. Is that something that you would be interested in this year?
Yeah, so I have a 20-inch auger and a little skid steer that we use for making the shade projects and stuff. But I think last year the issue was I was just already booked up with the equipment when y'all were planting. Something happened. But I think if the scheduling's done right, then I could, I could definitely get it out there and punch some holes. I mean, there's still a lot of shovel work to be done behind those auger holes, but it's a great start breaking up that compaction. So yeah, you can go ahead and mark. You can go ahead and tentatively mark me down for being able to come out and help with that for sure.
Do you think, Seth, that you could let us know when the best times are on your schedule? Because we will. That was something that was a little bit challenging for us over the past couple grants. So this would be really wonderful to go in and be proactive and know that we're going to have that auger available. So I mean, we could work around your schedule if we knew it.
Yeah, I don't have any solid planting dates set yet for the planting season. There are a few projects in the works, but really just the sooner y'all could set a date and I could get that on the calendar would probably be the best way to approach that. I'm not probably doing any making the shades this year just because I don't know what the landscape's going to look like at schools and getting groups together and stuff. So I probably will have a lot freer of a schedule this planting season. So.
That's awesome. Great.
I'm pretty sure I have access to a mini excavator too, which from working with you guys in this Making the Shade program, that's been pretty clutch. So don't count that out either. Yeah,
the skid steer and auger I have its limitation is moving trees, so it's only set up for digging holes. So that's the one big limitation, is it kind of only has one function. It kind of sucks, but
If I'm not mistaken, the last planting round at Broadacres, we used the backhoe type device from landscape management, and it was a bit of a problematic thing to get the trees off of the truck and to move them with it, but it was doable, and it did a pretty good job in digging the holes. So and as I recall, we dug those a little ahead of time of the actual planting, if I'm not mistaken. So we have some flexibility, I would think, in preparing the holes where it doesn't have to be done exactly the same time that the trees arrive. We just have to be careful about marking off those areas to cut down on the hazard aspect.
Yeah, and Phil, you're right. There's a little grace period there between the site prep and the planting, but I've seen it before that if you get a big pounding rain on those exposed holes, then you just got a compacted hole at that point. So do y'all have any idea, like tentative, is this going to be like MLK Day of Service kind of thing, or?
That's what we did last year.
Yeah, it could be if we wanted it to be.
Okay, I was just asking in regards to dates. So y'all just let me know when y'all are forming that stuff, and I'll make sure that y'all get on the calendar this year, and I'll make sure it happens. So.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you.
Can I stick in a couple of quick 2 cents here?
Sure.
Can you guys even hear me? Yep.
Yep.
We did both the hole driller and the mini excavator, and both of them worked fine on 2 different projects. When Seth did Timothy, he actually used the hole auger and augered a little bit around, so we had like 3 auger holes that we were planting in, and those trees did really well. And then we used the mini excavator up at J.J. Harris, and that worked really well. It's really a question of, the operator, I think, more than anything else, for getting that done right.
I feel like I've gotten better since you saw me running at Timothy, Larry. I dug a little deep on those holes, actually.
Yeah, you were a little deep on a few of them, but they still worked out okay, Seth. If
I could throw in a note about species selection, I know that I know that fruit trees and food bearing trees are a cool, feel good thing. I don't, maybe not feel good, that trivializes it, but from my point of view, especially when I'm looking at low income areas, I'm always looking at shade generation because, yeah, food desert is an issue in low income areas, but also all of the health issues that go along with higher temperatures, therefore, less canopy, higher temperatures. So to me, casting a wider net with canopy is kind of my train of thought when I'm planting in low income areas, but there's always room to mix it in. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, Seth, I think that's a great point. I tend to agree with you. I've got fruit trees and they get gobbled up by deer and roommates, and then they either, rust or rot or wilt or, fall. I think our mixed approach is, I think, based mostly in that, a lot of these folks don't even have a washer dryer. So we need to be cognizant of the shade in those areas where they're hanging up their laundry. I certainly agree. I think I think we need to kind of really tailor it to the site, to the specific location on the site, where they lost the huge water oak that crushed the children's center. Maybe we do a large canopy there. I was only thinking maybe fruit trees with that in mind, that they most likely will not bear edible fruit to feed a community, but more just the educational aspect. If kids can go out and see fruit growing over the period of time and kind of be like wowed by that. Um, that was my approach. And I was thinking, the flowering trees, everybody adores flowering trees. The smaller canopy stuff is not ideal for shade, but I think when I did my thesis research, I did it on being a tree nerd and a landscape architect. I asked people what they most appreciate about trees in their residential landscapes, and flowering was big, and the shade was big. Yeah, I think a mixed approach for sure, but I don't know if we count out fruit trees entirely. That's just my opinion. I don't know, we can discuss. I know we're trying to move along.
Thanks everyone for their contribution. So Rodney, I think we voted to apply, right? This is a good point to wrap that up. Is that right? Okay. So, which brings us to the steering committee meeting, or the committee reports, that is. So just a reminder, chair heads, please keep notes. Please keep notes for your upcoming committee meeting, and from that, you'll have your written agenda. So steering committee meeting, I expressed the notion of developing our own Making the Shade program, our own local grant option, and Seth Hawkins gave me the idea of to talk with Joe Burgess, and he Seth, if I'm not mistaken, he developed the Making the Shade program, right?
Yeah, Joe spearheaded it in Georgia. He stole it from another state. I think Arkansas might have had it before we did, actually. So he just kind of took the idea and branded the whole Making the Shade name on it. Then he kind of, Marietta Tree Keepers kind of took it over and did their own just for Marietta city schools and Cobb County schools. And I'm not positive about their funding mechanism for all that, but it's modeled directly after MTS.
And that was, my motivation in doing this is that I think we're tapped out. We've done such an effective job in Athens-Clarke County and supporting our schools. That they need to share the love. So, but we still have a significant need for shade in playgrounds throughout the county. So, I think we could pretty effectively replicate that. And it would require, of course, donations. And with the Making the Shade, I don't know if everybody's familiar with it or not. There's a match, so it was a $5,000 match. Is that right, Seth?
No, so actually, well, it is a $5,000 match, but it can be matched through in-kind donations. So there's no actual cash. It can be a cash match. It's happened before, but typically it's all volunteer labor, equipment, mulch donations, things like that.
And at least like Timothy Elementary, they had a run-a-thon or whatever that well overcovered, that $5,000 match. So anyhow, and like the donations, which I think Jesse is going to probably bring up on the promotions portion of the committee reports. Like I think potential donors would be excited about the notion of donating a tree in the name of blank, the memorial grove, so to speak, playground.
Yeah, I don't foresee y'all having issues tracking down donations or funding for this because it's such a just a feel good thing. People want to plant trees for kids. One thing I will say, if y'all do end up running up against budget issues, Sean, you've seen it, what we're able to do with $5,000 at these schools. We planted like 46 trees or something like that at Timothy. I want to say 40 something at Barrow. So, maybe if we just give in that we can't plant 42-inch trees, maybe we plant 20. That really can stretch the money out and spread the love a lot better.
I also want to say that because we write grants a lot, that the tool shed and the tools that volunteers use or children use as an in-kind donation can be used in that manner. So, if at some point you're feeling like you can't meet that match, that's often what we use.
Okay, and so I think that wraps it up. We did, Rodney and I mentioned that the notion of bringing this in to the educational committee, and I'd be glad to, continue to share with you and work with you on this as well. I'm passionate about it. So
yeah, I think there's a great tie-in with the education committee because if you read the Making the Shade grant, one of the requirements is a curriculum follow-up to the tree planting. So, I think that would tie in super well with like the Green Schools initiative here in the county and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of potential synergy there.
that would definitely be a good boost. Our educational committee was inactive for several years, and I think that's pretty well. This coming school year is a question mark, of course, but we'll see. Okay, so I think that wraps that up. Ad hoc interview committee. So next opportunity to nominate CTC members is January or February 2021. Currently, we have one vacant seat, and we'll need to assess what seats need to be filled from terms expiring from December 31st, 2020. Since Nita is going on sabbatical, there will be at least 2 empty seats that need to be filled. There's a desire from current interview committee members to cycle new CTC members into the ad hoc interview committee. CTC will need to advise for the open CTS member positions, and CTC member positions and their prospective members need to be verbatim. Guys, any input on that?
I'm happy to continue to serve on the interview committee, but I think I was one that brought up the point it would be good to have some new perspectives and new ideas. And some of some of our members who have just recently gone through the interview process would be desirable to have in an interviewer role as well, since they have experienced it recently and have a feel for it. So I think the thing to do may just be to open it up for volunteers to submit their names and their willingness to serve. Uh, Everybody on the committee doesn't have to show up every time, and that's the good thing about having a lot of people on it, because busy schedules and so forth make it difficult, and we don't need a room full of people by any means.
Phil, that's one of the questions I had. Would this possibly be done virtually?
Rodney had mentioned earlier that we could still have meetings at the landscape. There's a large room there if we had a limited number of people. I don't know if that's still a possibility, or if it's feasible to consider that or not.
The conference room here at the landscape management office is available. I've conducted interviews outside. We could also consider the big conference room at the planning office. I think we can find a place to conduct an interview easy enough. And while I have my mic on, I'm happy to continue in the interview committee because I have access to all the paperwork. But if there are other people who would be interested, I'm also happy to step to the side and share that paperwork with whoever so that you can engage in that process.
Now, I understand there's a script that fairly much that is followed for each person interviewed.
There is a script. We pretty much try to ask the same questions. And the interview questions could be updated as well.
Yep.
Would there be the option to do virtual meetings?
The only real option for a virtual meeting would be to schedule it in on our second Monday of the month, group, block of time for conducting all of our committee meetings. The Public Information Office is really pretty buried right now. I felt fortunate to be able to get us set up to be able to conduct these WebEx meetings and to be able to have that block of time set up. We could do it during them, probably between 4 and 5, because I don't think the Education Committee is planning on meeting during that time frame. So that would be a possibility.
Yeah. I'd volunteer if we could do it virtually.
Rodney, in regard to the virtual meeting and setting it up through the Public Information Office and so forth, is that appropriate? I mean, these are people who are not who would be interviewed, would be asked a number of fairly leading personal experience questions and so forth, who are not even members of the body as of yet. And it seems to me that almost falls in the category of personnel issues where a committee is able to go into closed session to have such a discussion. Now, my life is an open book. I have no problems with it. I think everything's already known and out there. But I'm wondering if this, what category this would fall into in that regard.
Is my mic on, guys? Okay. For some reason, my icon, it dropped off. Thank you, Phil, for that. That's a very good point and something I forgot about when I answered the question about maybe being able to meet during the committee meeting group block. With that in mind, it really would be better if we found a way to have those interviews outside of the WebEx meeting.
It seems to me that a simple Zoom setup would take care of it, and maybe that's not appropriate either. I don't know. I'm fairly new to this game, a meeting without meeting, but something to consider.
Well, it's super tricky given the sunshine laws, but I think the workaround on that is maybe the interview committee establishes a work group to conduct those interviews outside of the public format.
Can I jump on
how
real
is
quick?
Clarke County conducting interviews with folks they're hiring, say from, they have someone that applied from California. How are they handling that now? Given that not as many people are traveling, is this something they're already doing?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer. Human resources might know the answer to that. I really think the best approach for the CTC is to, meet outside or, figure a way to facilitate that.
Okay.
Can I jump on real quick and just clarify one point? This is, I guess I'll turn on my video. This is Andrew Saunders. I believe, and we can always ask the attorney's office for clarification. I believe that the CTC can have independent work groups, including groups to interview prospective members, and that those groups, as long as they are not large enough to constitute a quorum, can meet informally, I would say. So not subject to all of the nuances of the sunshine laws. However, whatever work is done in those groups has to come back before the full committee in a sunshine law compliant format. So historically, the CTC has done some interviews with 2 or 3 members. Obviously, these times might call for a slightly different format, but they would take some notes and then they would bring it back and they would say, we recommend candidate A. And with that, there's not quite the pressure that it's got to be in this season kind of televised, so to speak.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for that, Andrew. That helps a lot.
Thank you.
We are at the time where we need to consider moving on to the next item in the agenda.
Okay, so that's a CTC policy committee. And that's the CTC policy committee. That's the ordinance exploration of larger, more complex ordinance changes. Rodney?
Yes, thank you. So we did meet and we had a conversation. Essentially, the policy committee is at the place where it is moving on to discussions of larger, what it has called larger ordinance changes. These are things that would take a lot more conversations with ACC staff and maybe even involve some public forums of some type. In the process, I basically posed some questions to the policy committee and we just had a conversation and began the process. And I'll just read what we talked about. First of all, the question of answering what do we want and why, I think is critical. We need to know why we want to make an ordinance change. We need to answer the questions if that change would be wanted. Basically, we would need community feedback to find that out. Would it be supported? There's a process, and the ACC flow chart provides what that process is, and then how does the job get done? And this would be, who does the work, and the organization, and the meeting with the ACC staff and the mayor and commission, etc. This could involve a deliberative process. I know Joe Perloff has some background in different types of deliberative processes, but essentially we also need to, if a large ordinance change is pursued, it needs to be legitimate. In other words, we need to answer the question, do the citizens have a good reason to support it? Is it just? And the question here is it fair? Does it consider political inequality issues? And then the last question is it effective? Can it be effectively implemented? And this refers back to resources, expertise, enforceability, etc. I really believe that it will likely require many discussions and will likely involve public forums as a process. And this would involve discussions with community groups, ACC staff, the Planning Commission, etc. Some of the possible ordinance changes that have been discussed include the single-family residential loophole, an exploration of being able to provide stormwater credits, downtown tree requirements, median strip plantings, changing the temporary management plan inventory requirements from 18 inches DBH to 12 inches DBH. And I believe there's a few others, but that's the long and short of what our meeting was about. There were no actions taken, was really just had a conversation. Sean, you're muted. You're muted, Sean.
Thank you, Rodney. And so this brings up the Education Committee. Mark, you still there?
Yeah, we got some initial ideas out there for the Education Committee. A lot of it's about revamping a little bit of the existing literature that we have. So we've got the trifold we can take to tabling events. We have some pamphlets. And then Lee had the idea of breaking down the Education Committee's work between items that would go to the schools. So mostly for our Green School program, which Stacy's going to help us kind of get back in order, and items that would go before the community or professionals. So I put together that list, and of course I had it ready to go and realized that since I'm working remotely, it's on my other computer, and so I can't really share that with you. Outside of those few items, we looked at some other ideas. Edith has looked into what some of the other tree councils are doing in other cities around here. Some of them are doing some virtual events. Some of them are kind of at a standstill. But I think it'll be some good planning for the future, for what we might be able to provide as an organization. I don't know that we're going to want to jump right into virtual stuff at this point. I don't know about you guys, but I get invitations for 15 webinars a week anyways. And in the beginning of COVID, it was fun for a while there to learn some extra things, but I'm getting a little webinar out on that right now. However, I think a lot of the topics she brought up were kind of good ones that we could bring to the community in the future. So we can work on all of those aspects, and trying to think if there was something else very specific on that list. But I was hoping if Edith, Lee, and Stacy are available in that last window next Monday, if we could talk we would probably only need about 10 or 15 minutes. So if we can go over that list and then start figuring out some ways to divvy up some of those tasks and how we kind of want to address them, I'd love to have just a quick chat about that. And I'll share that document with the three of you, and then hopefully we can share with the larger group some of the action steps. That way, if there's some other folks in the group that might be able to help out or contribute to it. I guess the last component was the Making the Shade grant. I think it was Rodney or Sean had emailed me and asked that the education committee take on that as part of their role. And so if we can spend 10 minutes talking about some of the tasks and 5 minutes talking about how we might be able to help out with that on the education side next Monday, I think we can get that committee really going in the right direction, and we'll have a full update for that full group next month.
That's fine with me, Mark. I can meet next Monday at 3. So we'll just take that 3 o'clock time slot.
Yeah, I can do that as well, Mark. Thank you.
Cool, thanks, guys. There was also a mention of the education SPLOS. Did you mention that? I'm sorry, Mark.
I did not, but I'd be happy to look into it a little bit further. If the group has some thoughts, we can certainly get into that.
Great, thank you. That'd be great. All right, anything else, guys? All right, promotions committee. Jesse, are you still around?
Yes, I'm still here, of course. So I don't have a lot to cover. I think the biggest thing is that we need to vote on the giving levels to add to the website. And I think we had some discussion about this the last meeting, but we didn't actually officially make them the giving levels. And what the promotions committee had decided on was basically having no distinction really between like a commercial donor or individual donor, but just simply having giving levels, and then any individual or business could give at whatever level that they felt comfortable with. And eventually we'd like to assign gifts for the different levels of, you know, like a postcard or a print or something just to commemorate the fact that they gave. But we can decide on that at a later date. And for now, we were thinking just sending a thank you letter to everyone if they were to donate at the different levels. And so I'm going to copy and paste the different levels into the chat box so that I don't have to just read them out. And so, oh, I sent it to Rodney. Sorry. Let me try that again. Okay. So you should see the different levels that we came up with. And so you know, as long as, you know, we vote on this, I can add them to the website. And then I sent Pam an email asking for her to set up a PayPal account so that once the website is live, that we can just go ahead and add those different levels. Mary just asked a really good question on how we would advertise the potential to give. We have talked about having a quarterly newsletter, which will be kind of part of the rollout of the website. And then, you know, once we have all of this kind of wrapped up, we can also promote it on our Facebook and Instagram. We're planning on doing more social media posts for that. And then also direct requests from individuals. Mary has also written a letter. I don't think that that's finalized, but something to send out to specific individuals that would be interested in giving. So, you know, we can promote it as like, you know, at the $500 Sourwood giving level, you know, you'll receive this signed print of the tree that owns itself. And then we also had some saplings that we had purchased that hopefully will be available in the fall. And one of the ideas was at, you know, a certain level, then you get one of those tree that owns itself saplings. So that is my action item. Before we vote on that, one other thing, I have updated the website. It's not finished by any means, but if you wanted to kind of see some of the initial edits, you can certainly go. I will type in also the credentials for, I think the password's Ginkgo. You have to have a password to access it, but if you want to see what I've done, feel free to look around and send me suggestions. I don't really like, currently there's a white box around the logo. I need to change the font color in order to fix that. So if you have really nitpicky things, know that it's still a work in progress. So with all that being said, if there are any questions, let me know. And if not, I'd like to go ahead and just vote on these different giving levels. So I'll open up the floor for discussion on that.
I think that's great.
I did get your, this is Pam. I did get your email. I'll work on it tonight or tomorrow.
You know, the Georgia Tree Council right now, we're talking about sponsorship and giving and all this stuff, especially in this new age of COVID and us not providing any in-person programming. So has there been any thought to, like, what does a $5,000 donation get a business versus a $1,000 Tupelo donation? Other than they can say they gave the highest level.
That has not been completely fleshed out yet. You know, we had a lot of discussion about not giving for a specific tree to be planted, but rather a grove. But we didn't really, you know, aside from benefiting the Tree Council as a whole and the projects that we work on, I don't know that anybody would necessarily get something out of it other than like the good feeling of supporting the work that we do. However, you know, that is also something that we can kind of flush out in the thank you letter as well. Like, you know, your donation planted X amount of trees, or your donation went directly to, like working within the Athens Housing Authority, or whatever we're currently working on. So I think that's something that can be addressed once we actually get to that point, and not necessarily have to and like I said, you know, even with the gift levels, like we haven't really figured that out yet either, of like, you know, at the Sourwood level, what exactly are we going to send you other than a thank you letter? I'm not really sure yet, so.
I was just curious because that's something we're trying to flush out right now too. You know, one thing that we're kind of considering it, and this is at the state level with the council, is like, especially for businesses that are donating, especially businesses in the arboricultural industry, providing some kind of like online trade show. So maybe we did like an Athens-centric like online trade show, and if they donated a certain level, they get like a free booth space. It's just some ideas that we've been bouncing around. I was just curious if y'all had anything fleshed out. So,
unfortunately, no, not at this time.
Thanks, Jesse. So the action item is to bring the full council for a vote on donation levels that Jesse has set forth.
Can I make a real quick comment, Jess?
Yes, of course.
Just in terms of the naming, this is under the nitpicky category, right? I don't think anyone knows what a sourwood is, so you could put in something like a flowering cherry. And the same probably goes for a Tupelo. I don't think most people know what a Tupelo is. You just might pick another name for that. The levels look fine to me. I just would want people to recognize sort of a hierarchy of where they're going with these canopy level versus
Larry, I'm not going to
trees.
argue with you about the names of trees. Wouldn't you rather somebody just look them up? Maybe they'll learn something.
Maybe they'll learn something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Of course, all the sour ones will be finished with fall bagworms, so they'll be able to recognize those. Just say, wait till fall, you'll know what it is. Yeah, I don't know. I would just put cherry or something in there, I think, for the sourwood for sure. And you can leave the Tupelo because, again, that goes under education.
We were trying to just focus on native trees.
Oh, well, black cherry's native to here, to Georgia.
And then we were also trying to focus on size and grow.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I see your logic.
Okay, we're on a time
every
crunch.
time I see the
We have to
sourwood,
vote
I
on this.
cringe. I'm sorry, I just cringe. Except for like in late August when it's turning purple, then I don't cringe. But
If we still want a wood species, persimmon is one that people would recognize, and it's kind of it's a crowd favorite, is what I like to. Woods crowd favorite, so that might be an option.
Okay, then the species are not up for debate. The giving levels, however, are.
Okay. All right. So now we're ready to vote. It sounds like. Is that right?
I can't vote, so I'm okay.
Okay. So I move that we vote for establishing the donation level for the website.
Sean, before we vote, I've just been trying to draft the wording of the motion, so let me run this by everybody. CTC is voting to approve the donation giving levels as presented in the agenda, with changes being made to some names.
Potentially. Yeah, that's not.
For the use in promotional fundraising activities.
That sounds great, Rodney. Thanks for doing that on the fly.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. All those in favor?
I don't think it was seconded.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I seconded.
I was gonna say I just did it. So.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Anyone opposed? Okay. It has been moved that. Rodney, can you finish this sentence?
I'm sorry, what's that again, John?
Can you finish that? That was a lengthy sentence.
I just want you to reread what we just voted on.
The council just voted to approve the donation giving levels as presented in the agenda, with the possibility of changes being made for some of the names for use in promotional fundraising activities.
Okay, nice work. Thanks, guys.
While we have the promotions committee, this didn't pertain to that particular motion, but I would like to ask a question, and that is, Jesse, do we have official stationery for the tree council? Is there an existing thing? Obviously, it will be changed because we're going with our new symbols and so forth, but it'll become clear later in the meeting why I'm asking this, because the Trees for Tomorrow committee may have need for that sort of thing as well.
I don't think we do.
Yeah, I don't think we are. I thought you had all of the promotional stuff. I know somebody said they did, but I couldn't remember. I thought it was you, Phil. Does anybody know who has all of our?
I have had a box in the past that had some brochures and that sort of thing, but I have never seen letterhead or envelopes, and I don't know if they exist or not. We need to get going on that pretty quickly if they don't exist, because that will be an important part of our donation solicitation and response, I feel like.
I don't think I have anything in my files for the treasurer.
So there are many boxes of promotional materials I have in my cage here. Most everything on there is now outdated, but I'm happy to show whoever has interest in all of that stuff. I literally have boxes of it. A lot of Trees for Tomorrow brochures and some school programs and other things like that. I also have electronic files.
So for our business, the letterhead and envelope is a template, and I just load it I load the paper stock into the printer, just not a fancy printer, a little home printer, and I print out letterhead and envelopes as needed. And that's kind of replaced getting boxes of it printed up. And when I send out an invoice, I print the letterhead as I need it. It's not hard, and you can use any stock paper, and any simple little printer can do it.
That would definitely be more cost effective than having a bunch of letterhead printed.
Well,
and I can create a template now that we have the logos for anyone to use.
Okay, perfect.
I can print a lot of colored stuff at work. Not a ton, but I can print a reasonable amount of colored printouts with a decent logo and everything on it at my office if needed. Otherwise, I think the CTC should buy someone a color ink cartridge if someone's going to be printing them at home. So
that's fair enough.
Okay, thanks, guys. So that brings us to the trees for tomorrow ad hoc committee. Bill?
You're on mute, Phil.
Sorry. Okay. Hopefully you've had a chance to read the result or the minutes of our committee meeting from which these action items are coming in some of the background information. But we have two things to bring before the council as a whole. The first, we were more or less tasked with updating the valuation for the trees that are used in the Trees for Tomorrow program, but also to help, we hope to help the promotions committee and other branches of the CTC in explaining to the public or businesses who might want to donate what the cost of a tree in the 2 to 3 inch size that we typically plant would be to acquire, to transport, and to establish. That would be watering and so forth for at least the first year or two as needed. And the amount that we came up with, which is nothing more than a ballpark figure because there are obviously variations among species and so forth, would be $700. And so we would like to move that amount be basically identified for current purposes as the value of a tree planted by the CTC in any of its projects at present. If we can have someone second that, I presume we can discuss it briefly.
It's a committee motion. It does not need to be seconded.
Okay. Then is there discussion? We talked a little about this, I think, at a full council meeting in the recent past, but this is the first time we've met as a full group since the committee chose that amount.
I think it's a lot closer to what we actually spend for a tree than the old value of what, 175, which is just ridiculously low. And so we're just trying to standardize what we say to people.
Correct.
I think it's wise to, have that higher amount so that we can account for the establishment period of the trees and maybe possibly a little bit of structural pruning as well. getting these trees off to a good start will make a big difference.
I'm sorry that we have to make it such a big jump at one time, but we just fell behind for a long period of time in not updating that literature that had a price there for the Trees for Tomorrow Memorials program, and so there just was a lot of catch up to be done there. Is that to be voted on by the full council, or is it just to be approved by acclamation?
It's a motion. It should be voted on.
So a motion has been made to set the $700 donation amount.
I can read the motion if it would be helpful.
That'd be great.
So the motion is to set $700 as the estimated amount for the CTC to acquire and establish a quality 2.5-inch balled and burlap tree within its tree planting initiatives, and publicize this amount in promotional materials as a guideline for donations to our tree planting projects.
I call the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
Second item, I will read. This one may have more discussion. Vote a motion to dissolve the Trees for Tomorrow Committee, TFT committee, and provide no new funding for the TFT program. As such, obligated funds for the TFT Firefly Trail tree plantings will continue to be utilized exclusively for planting trees on the Firefly Trail until the obligated funds are exhausted. Now, since that does not require a second, I presume we can go directly into discussion of that. Part of the background for that is to shed the obligation of maintaining this Tree Legacies book in the library, which has fallen behind and in disrepair, and also to avoid any need for plaques or public posting of those parties that have contributed or those parties that are being honored by the contribution, in part to get away from the notion of an individual tree, even though I understand we are putting a dollar amount on trees that we felt like going forward would serve more the purpose of helping individuals in the community gauge some notion of what their contribution might purchase for the committee or for the council, and what that contribution might look like as it went forward. We also we do not have a memorial grove other than the Firefly Trail, which is not really a Trees for Tomorrow project, apparently, but we have no room in any memorial groves as such right now. We have talked some about the idea of continuing something like, perhaps we'd call it community groves, if we locate on public property in stable ownership and stable management situations that would be appropriate for the planting of a long-lived trees, continuing some sort of a grove program. This was brought to a head just this past week or two when Rodney got a call, which he very handily deferred to me, from a person who was looking to buy a tree for our Memorial Groves program in honor of her father's 80th birthday. Well, she and I have had conversation, and she's very understanding of the situation. I explained to her that we're in the midst of trying to make a decision about what we're going to do about this program going forward, and that right now, even if it did go forward, we don't have a place to put trees, a grove right now, but that I would be back in touch with her with some of the information regarding our decision. So I feel like we're trying to continue something which would encourage people to contribute to the tree canopy and to the tree growth in Athens-Clarke County, but to begin to move away from this program which we've had in the past, which seems to be a little bit onerous as far as keeping up with it.
Phil, just for the history for me, outside of the phone call you got last week, like how often were there requests for plaques, and how in the past groves, did they fill up quickly? Did it take a long time? What was it efficient recognition?
I
Rodney,
would say no.
Rodney is sort of the lightning rod for the tree council, and as far as receiving the phone calls and so forth, and he can speak to the frequency of calls better than I. Part of the slowdown, I think, has been that we aren't producing a lot of promotional materials out there to the public right now. Rodney, do you have something to say regarding that? You're mute.
The Trees for Tomorrow program was something that was initiated by the Community Tree Council as a way to, for an opportunity to increase canopy cover. It incorporated several different groves. There was the Prince Avenue Dogwoods was considered a grove. Sandy Creek Park has a now closed memorial grove that people could donate to the grove in honor of a past loved one, or for an elderly person's birthday. There's one called Collie Grove. One was Chase Street Grove. The Carl Jordan Grove is the current operational one that has money for the Firefly Trail. There was an airport grove. And I know there were also groves at schools for school plantings. So this was a really active vehicle for planting trees, and it was sort of wrapped up into a program that was shared by the ACC Community Tree Program and the CTC. The only thing that's active now is the Firefly Trail. Sandy Creek Park is closed out, and we're basically at a place where either have to rebuild the program or close it and formulate something else. I do have concerns that if there's nothing, so for instance, if there is no memorial grove ready when people call and they want to donate money, to plant a tree in a memorial grove, that's a lost opportunity. So I think the Tree Council really should kind of figure out an approach. It doesn't really matter what it's called, what the name is. What really matters is if the Tree Council is interested in receiving donations and creating groves that trees can be planted in. A grove concept is much better than donating for an individual, because that alleviates the pressure to try to keep a tree alive for one single person and then get the phone calls from the family.
Well, my recent experience in speaking with this woman a couple of times, is that what I was trying to do when talking with her was to steer her toward the notion that the CTC is still quite an active community program, and that we are working very diligently with grant type funding now, and that there's always need for more dollars for education within the community, but also for tree planting initiatives, such as I mentioned to her, the Broad Acres public housing project that we have had and that we hope to have, and that it doesn't diminish the opportunity and the need for people within the community to memorialize or honor folks by contributing to the work of the council. It's just that rather than a static grove, this is something that would move in time with where the needs of the council were as far as tree planting initiatives and educational opportunities and so forth. She seemed to be fairly receptive to that. We did not talk about the increase in price, but once again, that would no longer be a limiting factor, I don't think. I think they could look at those donation levels and donate any level they wanted. And I explained to her one thing that certainly would take place, which does with all donations, would be a letter of appreciation in which it could very easily be explained what the value, and I don't mean a monetary value, but what the value of that contribution would be to the community as far as the planting of trees and the educating of people to the value and the importance of trees in the community. So I see an opportunity to, if we deal individually with people who call and want to make donations, we've got a range of donation levels in place now. What they're named is another kettle of fish, but we have a whole range of donation levels that can be utilized by people, so that we don't turn anyone away because we're saying $700, nor do we tell them that is for one particular tree, but that it would contribute to the tree planting initiatives in the community. So we can continue, and I'm happy to be a part of dialogue with Leisure Services or with whoever county organizations hold real estate, including schools, perhaps, as far as groves. But I don't want to see us fighting about whether we're going to establish a grove here and call it a community or a memorial grove, and whether or not we can do a Made in the Shade grant there. It just seems like it's all working toward the same.
Phil and Rodney, this aside may be a little crass, but is there a tax write-off to individuals who donate?
Yes.
Okay.
It is we're not exempt. Pam, you can speak to this better than me, but my recent understanding was that we're not exempt to sales tax when we make purchases and so forth, but donations that are made to us are considered tax exempt.
Yeah, that's correct. We're a 501c3 organization, so it is, you can claim it as a tax deduction if you get that much to do under the new tax rules. So we still have to pay sales taxes because that's pretty hard not to get that. But yeah, they can get tax credit for it.
I hate to do this to everybody, but our time to wrap up the meeting. We may need to table this discussion until the next CTC meeting.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing about that? And to Phil's point is, Phil, I think that I can see a lot of things fraught with tying individuals to trees. And to that end, months ago, Rodney, you had talked about trying to get funding for a mapping tool to help create a master tree plan, because I think a master tree plan could solve a lot of these problems for donations and for participation, where you are adding a piece of the puzzle to the puzzle, and then you are participating. And so I would love to help get that done, and then we can use that as a tool as opposed to groves or any individual planting as a tool for fundraising.
That's an excellent point, I think, Mary.
Okay, so I think we at least did vote and approve the $700 amount. Is that correct?
The first item.
Okay.
And maybe this will shorten the discussion at our next meeting for the second item now.
Okay. So do we need to vote to table that, Rodney, or?
I don't think we need to vote to table it. I think we can just table it and continue the discussion on the next meeting.
Okay, got it.
Well, in the interim, the Trees for Tomorrow committee is not going to meet next week because we're in limbo.
Got it. Okay. And then just to reference ongoing business, we're going to hold off and table the carbon offset calculator until the website is up and running.
So with that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to end the meeting and announce that the next meeting will be conducted on August 10th.
Thank you, Rodney.
So if we could get a second, we could go ahead and vote.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Sweet. Awesome job staying on time, everybody.
Thanks, guys. It was great to see everyone's
Good work.
healthy face today. Nice work. Over and out.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Rodney. Can I ask you one? This is a work question. I know we're still meeting here. There was one review. I think it was the first one you did was originally signed to Jeannie. And so I think when it came back in for revisions, it's under her name. And so you probably don't see it in your review.
Okay.
Do you mind taking a look at 2361 West Broad Street? And I can email this to you if you'd like me to.
If you would, please. Yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay, I'm going to send you that email. If you could jump on it quicker, because we didn't realize it got to Jeannie when it should have gone to you. And I think it just kind of it sat around for an extra day or two.
Okay, I'll make it my priority tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Rodney.